Gema is a professor of philosophy of law at the Universidad de Castilla La Mancha, and she's gonna continue the discussion by discussing the impact of the financial crisis on EU law, and her presentation is called Consideraciones sobre la incidencia de la crisis económica, right?
Yeah.
And la democracia constitucional. I have the Spanish version of the title, but
yes,
you're gonna have the presentation in English.
Yes. I try. I am trying it. Thank you very much. I am very. I thank you a lot to the organizer of this conference. Delia Manzaneros is a woman who I like very much because she is very, very, very competent. I thank you, Diana, for your introduction, and I am going and thank you for your very, very interesting paper. I think we are interested in the same topics, more or less. So some things. The first conference have told, I am going to point out some reflections about this too. So, in order to organize my conference, I am going to say the 5 points in which I have structured the paper. I am going to begin with preliminary words, with an introduction. Secondly, I am going to speak about the globalization as an important issue in the reflection, in the study of the constitutional democracy law. After that, thirdly, I am going to speak about global crisis, global economic or financial crisis. Then I am going to speak about the constitutionalization of the crisis. More precisely, I am going to speak about the incorporation of the principle of the stability of the budget, the balanced budget. I don't know the exact word. Yes. Because it is the tool, the instrument that through it our European law is facing the crisis, I think. Let me to read the paper because I am going to be more comfortable in this way. So it is well known that law works behind the reality. However, the perception of the jurists and lawyers, both jurists and lawyers, and even of the ordinary citizen, is not simply that law responds to the problems very slowly, too slowly. The feeling is rather that the national legal system are being absolutely overwhelmed by the problems, and they are losing effectiveness as regulatory instrument. Law is losing effectiveness as a regulatory instrument, a regulatory tool. This overflow of the national states due to new problems is largely a consequence, in my opinion, of the globalization, or more precisely, of the global economic and financial crisis, which is a consequence of globalization. In the European Union, a lot of constitution, in the case of Spain too, we are making constitutional reforms in order to incorporate the principle of the balanced budget of the state. So it seems, I am going to it seems to us, or unless to me, that it is opening a new constituent period, a new constituent moment, at least in the framework of the countries of the European Union. Nowadays, the very important question in the political and legal system is how we can solve the new crisis. Not the crisis, but the new crisis. I think it's a crisis. In this regard, it's paradigmatic the reform of the German Constitution, the Article 109 and 115. And this reform was followed by our reform in September at the end of 2011. It is curious that the constitutional rules, being the most difficult to be amended, be rigid, are becoming a main instrument, a main tool in order to face the solutions to the financial economic crisis. First of all, economic crises are cyclical problems. It is doubtly that the Constitution, which is a consensus rule, is the most appropriate tool for heading this kind of problem. It may be better choosing the parliamentary law, not the Constitution, but the ordinary law, the parliamentary law. It's curious. In other words, the form of we are responding to the economic and financial crisis is not a consensus decision making. It's not under consensus. In particular, the trend to balance, to get a balanced budget is not generally as stable. It's near from a philosophical, a political perspective, very close to neoliberalism. So it seems that in our case, in the case of Spain, the context of in which the reform of our constitution took place was a desperate attempt to demonstrate in front of our European partners the Spanish commitment to reaction against the crisis, what has encouraged the urgency of our constitutional reform, in virtue of which was introduced the budgetary stability. So then there was a declaration in order to create a treaty. In virtue of this, all the countries of the European Union, they have to incorporate this principle. But we take the decision before not anybody, before everybody. One might say that today we are witnessing to the constitutionalism of the economic crisis. in this context, the purpose of the work I am going to be more I am trying to not to extend so much, but the purpose of this work is, in the first place, to give a point of view of the complex relation between globalization and the law of the constitutional democracy. In second place, I want to show the financial and economic crisis as a global crisis that reveals the weakness of the state law in contrast with the market strength. And thirdly, the imperative necessity of beginning a new lawmaking process, a new constituent moment, in order to solution to solve the crisis by generalizing the budgetary stability or the balances in the budget of the state. European economic crisis is revealing at least two dramas. First, a growing tension between politics and economics. And second, an erosion of representative democracy that progressively moves away from the ideal deliberative democracy, showing a growing distance between citizen and the representatives. They so-called the political class. This is very significant. The work, the paper, concludes, it can be said, of a brief analysis with an open question. The question is if the constitutionalization of the ways to resolve the crisis would put in black and white the principle of liberalism as principle of this new constitutional order that is being born, that is emergency. Maybe there can be realistic alternatives. Then I am going to speak briefly about this. The introduction is following with the second point is about how globalization is an important issue in the discussion about the law in the constitutional democracy. Because it seems to me there is a change in the questions the lawyers, the jurists in general are interested now. Normally, the constitutionalism framework have been a question that the main question in the legal theory, in the political theory, was the binding character of the Constitution. The binding character of the Constitution have implication. The paper of my partner it was about this. The judge is tied to the parliamentary law, but he cannot apply if he considers that the legislative rule, the parliamentary rule, is differing with the Constitution. This involves delivering an immense power in the jurisdiction, in the judiciary. And the problem is that the latter lacks of democratic legitimacy of the judges. This was the matter of the legal theory a lot of time. But I think it is very important, but I think it is necessary, or it may be necessary, to deal with the problem I have said, incorporating the reflections, incorporating to the reflections an additional issue. The globalization and its effects of the law, to the law. With regard to that, it is significantly the structure of the large book of Luigi Forragioli. Luigi Forragioli, the last book, is structured in 3 volumes, in 3 books, with 1,000 pages each volume. So it's a large book. And it is paradigmatic that he think it is impossible to his book starting with the models deals about the models of rule of law. Starting with the less sophisticated model, the more basic model, and advancing to the more sophisticated model, the constitutional rule of law. But he says that globalization is very important to understand the law in today. It is he says I don't know how to resume the paper. So the second volume of his large book is about the democracy in a global society, because he thinks that it's a nonsense to study the rule of law without taking in mind the problem of globalization. Globalization, I am going to resume the paper, but globalization is an economic matter, but it is not understandable if we don't put this in relationship with other types of relationships, social, political, etc. And the principal one of the consequences of the globalization was the freedom of the markets. The markets were not binding by the rule of the state, so that the crisis of the subprime mortgages in USA was a consequence of this lack of regulatory of the markets. Probably you have seen the documental Inside Job, and it is very paradigmatic. Take an example. So the consequence is that law, I am going to finish now, law is trying to respond to this problem, but as it is a global problem, we need a global law. But it is impossible a global legal system. So the solution is something as the governance. What is governance? Governance is a word, and I have not a clear concept of governance. But it seems to me that is that's put the markets in the same relationship as the states. So I think I finish in the same terms I have beginning. We are constitutionalization, a principle that is the budgetary stability. This principle is going to have consequences to the rights, to the human rights, because it is the base of the welfare state, and it is impossible with balances, with the necessity of the balanced budget. It is impossible to respond to the necessities to the citizen. So, who is the winner in this play? I think the winner are the markets, not the states. So we are constitutionalization, an order in which markets head the address the society. They put the law. So we can. I am going to finish. So we can observe, go back in the rule of law. I think it is my conclusion, the conclusion of my paper. Thank you for paying attention, and I am very happy if you have some questions to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.